Action. Let's get to our first guest, former CIA Director James Woolsey. He has a long history of dealing with terror groups, including the 1993 attack on the World Trade Center, which happened shortly after he became the CIA Director. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here again. Thank you for joining us. Let me get, I want to talk about funding for the ISIS group, et cetera, and more about the developments with the Brits on board. But first, I need to ask you about your reaction to the breaking news at the top of the hour regarding this horrific situation that took place in Oklahoma. There are those who want to term it as workplace violence. Others are saying, no, this is clearly an indication of homegrown terror. What's your take on the initial read of what you're seeing?
Whatever the reason for it, the man was apparently fired, and so it might have been resentment against the institution. But he was apparently a radical Muslim, and we had tried to recruit a number of people. So that might have had something to do with the motivation. Whatever it was, the phrase workplace violence, I think, is really stupid. It's a way of ducking looking at what the substance of something is. It's it's political correctness to the 14th power. Look, if he had done what the witch killers in Salem had done in the 1690s and burned her to death there in the warehouse instead of chopping off her head, would we call it fireplace violence? I mean, no. One needs to call it straight and say what happened and who the people were, and not to take refuge in goofy phrases like workplace violence.
I mean, certainly the Facebook page raises all kinds of questions, particularly with the rants that he was issuing on his Facebook page, celebrating terrorism and having, images of the World Trade Center when the second attack, the bombings happened, and celebrating Osama bin Laden. He had a photograph of him as well on his website.
Well, his website, and I understand from Steve Emerson in Oklahoma, uses phrases like inappropriate. It's not, it's not just a bad idea to chop off someone's head.
Absolutely. Moving along now to what we're seeing with what's happening overseas with ISIS. We've got the Brits on board, which is certainly a positive development. At the same time, though, ISIS is still growing, and when we talk about the funding sources, we know that one of the goals is to try and stop, for the moment, some of these major sources, for example, the oil refineries that ISIS controls. But from your point of view at this point, is it enough really to go after those oil refineries to stop ISIS from gaining momentum and getting more arms and equipment? I
think that's not enough, although it probably helps a bit. I think the way to go after the oil, and this would undercut a lot of folks we would like to undercut, Qatar and Iran and Russia, would be to make it possible for people to drive on something other than gasoline. It's a simple $90 change to a car in production to make it possible for it to drive on alcohol. And set aside ethanol, which is controversial. Just look at methanol, which is wood alcohol. That's easy to let people drive on that. If you could pull into a filling station and choose what you were going to drive on, it would be ISIS's worst week, it would be Putin's worst week, and drive the price of oil down to probably $60 a barrel.
But that's still obviously a ways off before any kind of action on that front is taken.
But the changes are tiny. The changes that it takes are very, very small.
Overall, the campaign, as you see it, in terms of the way we're going about getting our partners on board and the fact that we have the Arab nations, a few Arab nations obviously participating, what's your overall view as to the way the business of the military operations is being conducted, although we are still hearing that no American combat troops are going to be on the ground? Well,
I've been pretty critical of the administration on a number of things, including its conduct of foreign policy and national security. I think it is a success story for Secretary Kerry to have gotten these 5 Arab states on board and participating in the operations, even to a small degree. But leaving Syria out of the areas in which we're conducting operations, most people are conducting operations, is a bad idea. We really are going to have to use force, I think, against Syria, and we ought to be doing a lot more to build up the people who are willing to work with us, and first among those, I think, would be the Kurds. So it's a tough situation. It's not easy to manage at all. but we have got to stop ISIS from building the caliphate, and that's what they really are after in Syria and Iraq, and then expanding it. That would be a terrible thing for the Middle East and for world peace.
James Woolsey, always great to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.